Tell us when. Good. So we've been looking, we've only had 1 week so far. Are we moving? Ben, my thing's not moving it on. Sorry about this, technical problems, just briefly. There it is, excellent. We've been talking about going into the deep with God, into deep places. What does that mean? And last week, can anyone remember what we looked at last week? What was the main bit of story? What was the main story we looked at? Oh, that's not good, is it? Every preacher knows this.
Give us a clue.
That you preach a sermon 1 week and they'll have forgotten it the next.
Give us a clue.
I'll give you a clue. Jesus was there.
Because Suzanne did the birds with wings.
So they remember the worship bit.
No, she was going up. And you
That's right.
mountain, up on the
Mountain. What happened on the mountain?
Transfiguration.
The Transfiguration. So Lou got it. So we had Jesus go up the mountain with Peter, James and John, and he met, who did he meet there?
Moses and Elijah.
Moses and Elijah, that's right. And we're talking about, and what we saw in the end, we did look at some experiences of Moses and a little bit of Elijah. I said we'll revisit them, which we will do today, certainly one of them. And then we looked at Peter and what he thought, and actually how Peter saw what happened on that mountain as the pivotal part of his faith. That the revelation that God gave him on that mountain, even though poor Peter looked like a fool on that mountain when he starts trying to talk and God interrupts him, Peter points to that as his moment of genuine faith, of understanding. Today, as I said, we're going to move on a little from there, and we're going to look at Moses' experience of God. And I called this part 1 because there's actually, Moses had lots of experience of God, and there's 2 bits I want to talk about in this. So what happened to Moses in his journey? Does anyone know, what was the first time Moses experienced God? Does anyone know this? Many of you will know it from the burning bush. So let's have a look. Here we have a picture of it. This is Moses. The first picture on this side, for you guys, I'm looking backward there obviously, is Moses tending the sheep. Moses tending his father-in-law's sheep. And then he sees a bush burning, doesn't he? So let's have a look at that story. See what's happened. It says, Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock behind the desert. That's what literally it says. Many of our scriptures say, on the other side of the desert, which is likely what it means, and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of Yahweh appeared to him in a flame of fire from the midst of a bush. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Imagine you're sort of shooing your sheep along and then suddenly you see this fire in the midst of a bush. It says the angel of Yahweh appeared to him. And he looked and saw that the bush was burning with fire, but was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside and go see this great sight. Why the bush isn't burning? Why the bush doesn't burn? Interesting, isn't it? I would go and have a look at that too. Yahweh saw that he had turned aside to look, and God called to him from the midst of the bush and said, it's interesting that it starts with his name, Yahweh, and then says, and God, it does that a bit. Like they're 2 different things, but actually we know the same. And he explained it here. He says, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. Yahweh said, do not come near to this place. Take your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. That's a pretty big encounter, isn't it? Not many of us get to have an encounter like that with God. I haven't had one quite as spectacular as that, I don't think. And it's very much a first thing. You notice, what does Moses do after meeting God? What's his first reaction, in a sense, there? He hides his face. Oh, I can't look. It's too much. This God is too much for me. And that's quite a common encounter. And God comes to him as sort of as fire, as lightning fire, isn't it? A bush that's burning. It's an interesting way of looking at the way God comes. I know for me, last week I talked about my first encounter with God, and to me it was like a beam of love and light coming through me. So that light's very much there. I remember even another encounter I had when I was a young Christian, and I was away on a camp in Naracoorte, and I was praying at night with some friends. We were listening to worship music, and I had what looked like a vision of God in the throne room. And he was bright with light, so bright that everything else, like in front of it, looked black with the silhouette, because God was just this bright light. And very much you see that sort of thing. And Moses hides his face from this because it's too intense. It's too much for him. Do you think this happened to Moses all the time when he met God? No. In fact, we know from last week, at one stage, Moses' face shone, didn't it? So obviously, it doesn't stay there. It didn't stay in that space of Moses hiding from God, did it? It progressed. So we're going to have a look at the next one, the next bit. Can anyone tell us what that's about? The Ten Commandments. That's right. This is the bit around the Ten Commandments. So I'm going to start with the verses just before the Ten Commandments are read out, and then go to the verses just after the Ten Commandments are read out. We'll see what's happened. So this is Exodus 19:9, 16 to 19. This is all before. I did the 9 for an intro to 16 to 19. It says, "And Yahweh said to Moses, Behold, I come to you in thick cloud, so that the people may hear my speaking with you, and they will believe you always." That's a fair thing, because Moses at that point had led the Israelites. He even led them across the Red Sea, all the plagues of Egypt, 10 plagues of Egypt happened, but the people didn't believe that Moses spoke for God all the time, did they? They kept arguing with him. So God says, I'm going to come in this cloud and I'm going to speak to you. They're going to hear it and they're going to know. And then Moses told the words of the people to Yahweh. So God speaks to Moses, Moses speaks the words of people to God. And it says, on the third day in the morning, there was thunder, lightning, and thick cloud, and the sound of a very mighty trumpet. And all the people in the camp trembled. That would be, you tremble, wouldn't it? That sort of sound, and thunder and lightning and thick cloud. Moses brought the people out from the camp to meet God, and they stood beneath the mountain. Mount Sinai was completely engulfed with smoke as Yahweh descended upon it in fire. That's pretty intense, isn't it? This is a powerful God coming down, isn't it? And fire is happening in smoke. And its smoke ascended as smoke of a furnace. Now, I don't know if you've seen the smoke from a furnace, but the older furnaces, I've seen sort of reenactions of this, really pumped out a lot of smoke. Just thick black smoke. And it's probably the most intense thing that the people of that day knew in that sort of way. Just intense smoke pouring out. And, oof. As Yahweh descended upon it in fire, and smoke ascended as smoke of a furnace, and the mountain shook greatly. When the sound of the trumpet was long and very strong, Moses spoke, and God answered him in voice. So interestingly, the people hear this. The very next thing that God says is, he says, I'm the Lord your God, you shall have no other God before me. That's interesting. So God is speaking this from the cloud, and the people are hearing the Ten Commandments. I always had in my head that Moses wrote them on a thing and then brought them down. And he did do that, that's later. But actually, when God first speaks them, they're all hearing. Fascinating. So they hear the Ten Commandments. And then this is the little bit after. This is in Exodus 20, verse 18 to 21. And all the people saw the thunder and lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. When the people saw it, they trembled and stood afar. They said to Moses, you speak with us and we will listen, but do not let God speak with us, lest we die. They're afraid, aren't they? It's interesting, Moses was afraid the first time, wasn't he? When he met God in the burning bush, he hides his face, he's scared. Here we have the people are scared. It's an understandable thing when you haven't understood, you don't know who God is, you don't know what he's like. It's a pretty fearful thing. And I love what Moses says next. It's quite interesting. It says, Moses said to the people, do not fear. Don't fear. Because that's what you're doing, you're fearing. God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be upon you, that you may not sin. That seems a strange thing, doesn't it? Don't fear. God's come so that you'd fear him and not sin. Now, oddly enough, it is the exact same Hebrew word. Seems a bit odd, doesn't it? Like he's saying, don't fear and yet fear. But actually the word Hebrew is a language with broad meanings in its words. And very much this is taking on an idea and understanding that who's the one that's important? God, that's what it's saying. Or would be another word that some translators put in there. But it is the same Hebrew word. The people stood far off, but Moses drew near to the thick darkness, and God was there. That's a fascinating last line, isn't it? So far, how has God come? He's come as fire, as light, things like that, hasn't he? What's he coming now? He's coming darkness, isn't he? And God was there in the darkness. That's a strange development, isn't it? The early church fathers saw this and they wrote a bit about it. In fact, they talked about this sort of experience of God, this deeper experience of God. And there's one guy who particularly did this. It's a guy named Gregory of Nyssa. That's his photograph there. That's what it is, isn't it? No. We haven't got a clue what he looks like. But actually, if you go online and look at all of the pictures of him, he looks sort of like that. So someone decided a long time ago he looks like that, and everyone paints it looking like that. Fair enough. You've got to work out who he is. Gregory of Nyssa. He's sort of was born in about the 340s AD and lived through till 394. And he was the bishop of a place called Nyssa. And so he also wrote a book called The Life of Moses. That's important, isn't it? And The Life of Moses actually is a book looking at the life of Moses, but talking about what he calls contemplative prayer. The highest point of prayer, being with God, in communion with God. That's what he's talking about. So he's using the life of Moses to talk about that sort of prayer and how important it is and what it's like. So I'm going to give a quote here. It's a bit of a long quote, and I'll explain as I go. But hopefully it makes some sense, and then we'll unpack a little. It says, what does it mean that Moses entered the darkness and then saw God in it? What is now recounted seems to be contradictory to the first theophany. Now, a theophany, that's a long word, isn't it? Theophany just means appearance of God. So the first appearance of God was the burning bush, wasn't it? And yet light. And yet this seems to be the opposite, he says. Seems to be somewhat contradictory to the first one. For then the divine was beheld in light, but now he is seen in darkness. He's going, oh, it's a bit weird, isn't it? Why was he seen in light, now he's seen in darkness? Let us not think that this is at variance. Don't think that this is different with the sequence of things we have contemplated spiritually. In other words, this is something that in spiritual contemplation we experience. That's what he's saying. Scripture teaches by this that religious knowledge comes at first to those who receive it as light. And so many people I know talk about God coming and it was like light. God came in light to our souls. Therefore, what is perceived to be contrary to religion is darkness. And the escape from darkness comes about when one participates in the light. Have you heard this before? That said before? It's in the scripture. Jesus says it. Talks about light and that people love the darkness and they hide from God because they love the darkness. But Jesus is light. John, the Apostle John, talks about God being light. In him there is no darkness. Where am I? And the escape from darkness comes about when one participates in light. But as the mind progresses and through an ever greater and more perfect diligence comes to apprehend reality, as it approaches more nearly to contemplation, more nearly to that prayer of life in with God. It sees more clearly what of the divine nature is uncontemplated. In other words, so I'm going to have to explain this a bit, aren't I? And I knew that. This guy speaks in old language and in a different thing than we're talking about, and he's a smart guy. He's saying that the more you go into God, the more you touch on the things that you don't know about. That makes sense, doesn't it? Same as that idea that people say the more you know that you don't know. And that's it, because God is fully unknowable, isn't he? And the more you go in, the more you touch on these things that are unknown. At first, and I know I experienced it, at first God is light and you see it and you go, wow. But as you go in, it's deeper and deeper. Bear with me, got a little bit more of him to go, and then we'll unpack it a bit properly and hopefully bring you to some place that will help you to see. For leaving behind everything that is observed, not only what sense comprehends, but also what the intelligence thinks it sees, it keeps on penetrating deeper until by the intelligence's yearning for understanding, it gains access to the invisible and to the incomprehensible. In other words, he's saying that as you press deeper and deeper in with God, you gain access to things that are actually incomprehensible, that you can't see with your eyes, you can't feel with your hands. It's a knowledge that's deep within, that it doesn't come to you in light. That's what he's talking about. This is the true knowledge of what is sought. That is the seeing that consists in not seeing, because that which is sought transcends all knowledge, being separated on all sides by incomprehensibility, as by a kind of darkness. Wherefore John the Sublime, who penetrated into the luminous darkness, that's meant to be what do you call that when you're opposite idea? Luminous darkness, yes. Luminous darkness says, no one has ever seen God, thus asserting that knowledge of the divine essence is unattainable, not only by men, but by also every intelligent creature. In other words, this God who is beyond us, we have the joy of delving into some of it and seeing. The thing is, though, when you do that, you get to a point where things aren't illuminated easily because they're beyond comprehension. And you're surrounded by things that you can't get your head round. But you can know God in there. That's what he's talking about. I want to take this a little further. So he says, I'll put it bluntly what he says. He says, God first comes to us as light. In him there is no darkness, that idea. But his full nature is only found in darkness, as his infinite nature cannot be seen naturally. That's what he's saying. And he uses Moses' experience to say that. Now it's interesting because many of the ancient sort of church leaders of the time talked about this and loved this idea. And I must admit, for me, when I started reading about it, I've experienced that to some extent. I've experienced that deeper God in the darkness. My first experience of God was light. But I experienced actually there's a space that's different, that I can't see the stuff that's there, but I know it's there. It's only revealed by the Spirit of God in me. It goes on and says, for this reason we also say that the great Moses, as he was becoming ever greater, at no time stopped in his ascent, nor did he set a limit for himself in his upward course. Once having set foot on the ladder which God set up, as Jacob says, Jacob's ladder is what he's talking about there, he continually climbed to the step above and never ceased to rise higher, because he always found a step higher than the one he had attained. What do you think he's talking about there? That's the idea of infinity, isn't it? That it keeps going on, that God keeps going on and keeps going on and keeps going on. So what we see here is this is the finite, us, finite, searching for the infinite. It's not an easy thing, isn't it? Searching for the infinite. Moses was finite, but searching for the infinite. He goes in with God in the darkness and sees God. Not with his eyes, but he perceives God. He knows he's there, and God reveals himself more and more. The thing is, you can never get the full revelation of God. Why is that? Because there's always more. You can never get it. So I wanted to wrap this up. Hopefully, I've blown your mind a bit here, I recognise. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to stretch a little bit. Hopefully it won't explode like a rubber band popping or something, here. Because I want to talk about the infinite nature of God. How is God infinite? What does it mean when we say God is infinite? So, best way for me to do it is mathematically. And I'm going to look at this. I've got a number line here. Who here has done number line before? A few of us. Ben at the back has. He's a maths ed. And here on this one, I'm just doing it in metres at the moment. See, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 metres. All right. Can we go further than 4 metres? I think we can. We can go further, can't we? That's not the end of all things, is it? But I'm not going to add, because actually, usually when we talk about infinity, we just keep adding one. I'm going to multiply. Let's multiply by 10. That's multiplied by 10. We have 10 metres, 10 metres, 10 metres, so there's 40 metres in there. Does anyone recognise where that is?
So if you've gone 10 metres up, is that the idea?
Oh, no, I've stretched it, so each of those is 10 metres long.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know where that is? Is that? Here. That's right here, that's right. Let's go another 10, let's multiply it by 10 again. We can keep doing this, can't we? See, the point about infinity is it keeps going, doesn't it? There we've got 100 metres wide, and there's more, isn't there? Does it stop?
Is there a house in there? I can't do
Yeah, our house is in there, just across there. I can see it just. 1,000 metres, our house is in there, definitely. Can we keep going? Yeah, of course we can, because it keeps going, doesn't it? Now, 1,000 metres is probably not good. We're going to talk in kilometres from now, just so that I can fit in more zeros. All right, let's jump out a little bit. Ooh, look at that. Where's that? That's South Australia, isn't it? There's 100 kilometres worth. Is that the extent of things? That's a big amount, isn't it? But there's more, isn't there? This is the nature of infinite. Here, look, there's 1,000 kilometres long, and Australia is just over 4,000 kilometres wide. So you can see it there, it fits in there. 1,000 kilometres. Is that as big as we can go?
Makes you realise how south Brisbane is, isn't it?
What's that, sorry?
Makes you realise how south Brisbane is.
Yeah, it's quite south, Brisbane. Can we go further than that?
Yeah.
Of course we can. Sure, let's go out another 10 times. Oh, that's the Earth, isn't it? Is this anywhere near infinity yet? Yes, says Lou. Of course it's not, is it? It's just silliness. I'm being silly. I'm trying to prove a point here, trying to give a point. See, look, here's the solar system. That's how big the solar system is. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 1 billion kilometres, that. Because the solar system is about 4.4 kilometres wide. Can I... Yeah, is 1 billion kilometres. Now, can I say, that's not to scale.
I was going to say.
If it was to scale, you wouldn't be seeing the planets. They're too small.
Yeah.
You'd just see the sun. And,
I was going to say Jupiter, isn't that?
and the distances between it would be massive. Jupiter actually sits in the first block easily, and Saturn is just on the edge of the first block. And the others are really far out. It's not to scale, I'm sorry. But is that the end of things? No. Oh, look at that one.
Where's Australia in all that?
Where's Australia in there? Yeah, where are we?
Where's the, yeah.
It's huge. This is our galaxy, the Milky Way. Now, I can't even tell you how big that is because it hasn't got a name, but it's big, isn't it? Is that the end of things? No, of course not. This is the observable universe. That's pretty big, isn't it? Look how many zeros after that. That's why I didn't write the other ones in, because it goes past them. It's about 23 zeros, I think, after it. It's massive, isn't it? Here's the thing. Is that infinite? No. Woo. We can keep doing this, can't we? And that's the nature of infinity. Infinity is such that you can keep going and you can multiply, and it just keeps going. What's that?
Infinity plus one.
Infinity plus 1 equals infinity. That's actually the definition of infinity in maths, which is interesting, isn't it? And infinity times any positive number is infinity. So, here's the thing. David says this. David says, where can I go to escape your spirit? Where can I flee to escape your presence? If I were to ascend to heaven, you would be there. If I were to sprawl out in Sheol, that's the place of the dead, there you would be. If I were to fly away on the wings of the dawn and settle down on the other side of the sea, even there your hand would guide me and your right hand would grab hold of me. Where is God? Everywhere in that infinity. That's quite an incredible thought, isn't it? That even when you look at the whole of the universe as that little blip in the middle there, God is beyond that. That's pretty powerful, isn't it? This is what being infinite means. How do you comprehend it? My head struggles with this, and yet God is there. How does it make you feel when you think of this sort of thing about God? How does it make you feel? Got some people just looking going, ooh. I get it. It's overwhelming to some extent, isn't it? Here's the thing. I was thinking about this when I was on a walk earlier in the week, and I felt overwhelmed, but also I felt stretched, like I was thin. Do you understand that? In trying to think of infinity and think of God being infinite, I felt thin and stretched out. I remember our son over there, he once said, and he was quite young, he was talking to Lou in the car one time, I think on the way home or something like this. He was talking, and he said, do you remember this, Ben? If a three-dimensional object goes into two dimensions, it becomes infinite. Now, he's technically right, because you squish it in and it becomes infinite, because it's infinitely thin. Here's my problem, it's thin and stretched out. And I was feeling this, it's thin, and actually I realized in me there was a feeling of, oh, God, how can you be that infinite, that far out, and be present here? It's like you're thin here to me. But that's because I didn't understand true infinity. This that we've talked about here is the small infinity. In maths, there are two infinities, and this is the small one. It's the smaller number, which is quite weird, isn't it? Because we're talking about adding each time and just expanding the amount of kilometres. But you can technically count that. If you have eternity, you can count all the kilometres. It's a bit of a stupid thing to do, a bit of a boring life, but there's more. So we're going to go back to our little space there, back there. Between 0 and 1, there's a bunch of stuff. See the 1 come up? Between 0 and 1, there's half, isn't there? There's a quarter there, and there's 3/4 there. But is there stuff between the naught and the quarter? Yeah. Now I'm going to do it in tens, because tens is better, so I'm going to stretch it more. 1/10. That's pretty good. 1/10 of a metre, 10 centimetres. But you can go better, can't you? Let's go to 1 millimetre. That is a zinc-plated roof, that's what that is. Up close. And if that's 1 millimetre, that's sort of what it looks like up close. Is that as far in as you can go? No. Now, I'm going to get fake with our things now because we can't take pictures of it. But let's look at this. These are the atoms of a zinc roof. Pictured there in their lattice. Have a look at how many zeros. How small is that? It's tiny, isn't it? Is that as small as you can go? Of course not. There are other things now that we know within the atoms called quarks and fermions, all these little weird things, and they work together in there, and they're even smaller. Is that as small as we can go? No. We can go right in between, and the truth is, there is an infinite number of spaces between 0 and 1. Infinite amount. That's pretty incredible, isn't it? So not only is it infinite when you go that way, there's an infinite amount inside there. This is called the big infinity. When you add all of them up, it's way bigger. All right. What on earth has this got to do with God? Actually, everything. The Apostle Paul says this. He was in the city of Athens, and he's talking to these philosophers. He talks about God and says, "For in him we live and move about." Some versions say, "In him we live and breathe and have our being." He's everywhere, every little bit of it. But actually, he gets a lot deeper in the book of Ephesians on this, but we miss it because it seems to be a throwaway line. Yet I think the Apostle Paul had the understanding of this. He understood it fully. It says this, "Now the church is his body, the fullness of the one who fills everything in every way." That's interesting, isn't it? Who is God? God's the one who fills everything in every way. So we think of God as infinite, going out, that he's beyond the universe, is everything, isn't he? But actually, his infinite nature is here, in the tiny. And I was thinking about this on my walk, and this is sort of the explanation that came to me that made sense. God infinitely fills every infinitely small space with his presence, love, and power. To me, that's quite incredible. That our God fills every little space of the universe. He absolutely fills it. He infinitely fills it, even better, with his presence, love, and power. Did you know that? Because if God is infinite as we speak, if he is that, this is true about our God. There isn't a tiny little speck in the universe that God doesn't fill. Can you escape him? No. See, our God isn't stretched out over the universe. He thickly fills it with his presence. He is everywhere. He is always there for you. He is above all things. Our job is to delve, to dig a bit into this infinitude. That's our job. God just calls us to come and be part of that and to explore a bit more. He called Moses to explore into the darkness. Come in. He called Peter to come in the transfiguration. He says, come explore me. Delve into his infinitude and revel in the life that it brings. It's not a thing. So often we come to God and we think about doing things and obeying this and doing the right thing and all that sort of thing. But actually, if this is true of God, what does that mean? He's far larger, far bigger, far more loving, far more gracious. That our God fills every tiny, infinitely small piece of the world, of the universe, with his presence and love and power. Our God is strong enough for you wherever you are, whatever you're doing. He calls you into that. Says, come dig a little bit. Just even though you'll only dig at the surface because you're finite, that's okay. And revel in my love. My hope is that during these few weeks that we're talking about this sort of depth of God, that you're going to allow yourself to be free in this. There's no sort of thrashing of the back to make you work hard or anything like that, because that's not what it is. It's an exploration of the infinite nature of God, of the love of God that is more and more than anything you could ever know. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you that you just are. That everywhere we are, every part of our being, you fill with your presence and power and love. Lord, open the eyes of our heart that we would understand this more and more. Open our eyes that we would know your love more and more. That we can trust you, even though it doesn't look like it, even though it looks so often like you're not there. That is a lie. That you are. You are in every space. And your infinite nature calls us into you, into your love. Lord, continue to call us, that we would spend our time simply being with you and knowing your power in us and knowing your love in us. Lord, bless us here, bless your church, bless all those out there. Lord, that this would be something, as Paul had in his head, that we would have in our head and heart and understand, and that we would live in that freedom. Bless us in this, we pray. Amen. Amen. Hopefully you can dwell on this a bit over time. I've been dwelling on it for the week, and it's been lovely. It's a good thing. I think this is one of those revelations you go, It helps you to understand the nature of God, who he is, and who we are, and where we sit. So, now we better wrap things up. It's only a couple of notices to give. One is that we will be continuing delving into the deep over the next couple of weeks. Got 2 weeks more, and then we head away on holiday for a couple of weeks, and then we're back. During that time, John P. will be speaking the first week. The week after that, we haven't yet worked out what we're doing, so we're going to be able to discuss it with people and see what we want to do at that time. Should be good. And then, so not next week coming, but the week after, so the first Sunday of July, we'll be having our gather for dinner night. I can't even say it right at the moment. Soup night, because it's that time of year, isn't it? So bring along your most hearty soup and I will eat it. That would be great. Excellent. Other than that, here's the banking details usual. Thank you for those that give. And God bless you all. Have a great week and all that. Amen. Thanks. Yeah. You done, Ben?